How is everyone doing today? Yeah? Okay, great. So my name is Snigdha. I know it's a very difficult name, but today I'm going to talk a little bit about why stories are your best friend. And my goal today is that wherever you are on your journey, there's a story that will resonate with you to take you to your next level. So the first thing I like to do is kind of get to know the audience. How many of you are working on your own thing already? Can you all raise your hands? Wow. Okay, and how many of you are thinking about doing your own thing, but haven't quite done it yet? Okay, we have some hopefuls here too. Okay, great. So today we're gonna talk a little bit about my story, the Juggernaut story, and then we're gonna talk about you. So stay tuned till the end, right? Okay, so growing up, I think there was a bunch of stories that I told myself, a bunch of different mantras that resonated with me. You can see some of them here. So one of them is you can be anything you want to be, always be hustling. I wanted to point that out because that's on my AirPods, and this is the Asian Hustle Network. And lastly, build something people want, which comes from Y Combinator. And I'll kind of show you how all of these three things really influenced who I am, and I guess why I'm here today. Cool. So this is me. I was born in India. I lived there until I was about 3, and then I moved to the US. I still visited New York a couple of times as a baby, so you can see me holding a turkey leg during Thanksgiving. But you can see I was pretty much a riotous kid. I was like banging pots and pans. I was scribbling in notebooks. But my story was very much this kid who grew up in this village in a state that didn't even exist yet in India. And I was just kind of out of control, and I just loved doing my own thing. My mom quickly soon realized that she should leave me to my own devices and leave me be, because I just wouldn't listen to anybody. I think I complained when I was like 2 that I really wanted to go to school, even though school started for age 5, and then I ended up she somehow convinced somebody to take me to school, and I came back and recited poetry to her. So I was just a really weird kid, and I think that all of us probably have interesting stories that if we ask our parents, they'll tell you a little bit about who you are before other people told you who you were. But before I talk about who I was as a kid, a lot of it had to do with where I was growing up. So I don't know how familiar you might be with subcontinental history, but I'm a product of partition. So in 1947, the British finally left the subcontinent, and they left in a hurry. And this one man was kind of designated to draw the lines between the borders of present-day Pakistan, India, and Bangladesh. Bangladesh was actually part of Pakistan before and called East Pakistan. And it created chaos. My ancestors are from the area that is now in Bangladesh, but then my dad's side of the family grew up in what is now Burma. And my family ended up all over the subcontinent. All the stars on the right-hand side, that's where my entire family is. So when people ask me, where are you from, that kind of age-old question, it's really hard for me to answer, because I could answer India. I am Indian. But technically, I'm also from the area that is now in Bangladesh, so I'm also Bengali. And technically, my dad's side of the family grew up in Burma, so I guess they're also part Burmese. They had to leave after the Japanese invaded Burma during World War II. So as you can see, we're also a product of conflict, geopolitics, statehood, migration, genocide. There's so many things that influence who we are personally as well. But that first thing I told you was, that idea that you can be anything you want to be, right? I think I told you that story. Because I believed in that, I did some crazy things when I was younger. I ended up, entering myself into the New York City Spelling Bee and going to the Nationals. And this was before, I guess, everybody going to the National Spelling Bee was Asian. So that's me when I was 11 at the National Spelling Bee. On the right, I went to business school, even though my parents were like, we don't understand why you're going to business school. It is not a profession. A profession is like being a doctor or an accountant or a lawyer. But okay, fine, you're going to business school. And I was one of the, I think, few women who ended up graduating at the top of my class in a school that only had 40% women. And then on the bottom, I don't know if many people recognize this guy, but his name is Shah Rukh Khan. He's one of the biggest superstars in the world. He has billions of fans. And I pitched one of my colleges. I was like, hey, I really think we should bring this guy to college. And they thought I was nuts. They said, how are you going to bring the biggest superstar to Yale? I was like, you know what? I have a memo. I wrote a 12-page memo. I pitched this, girl in my Hindi class who happened to be friends with Shah Rukh Khan, who's sitting right next to him on the other side. And by the time I was 22, I was having dinner with Shah Rukh Khan for 2 hours. If you ask me what we talked about, I cannot tell you. It was like I was totally blacked out. I don't even understand. I think I asked him something about his latest movie, maybe his favorite drink. I don't know what we were talking about, but as you can see, I was just enchanted and enamored by him because that's the effect he has on everybody. One of the reasons I also believe anything is possible is because of Bollywood. If anybody watches Bollywood, ridiculous things happen all the time. There's song and dance numbers out of nowhere. There's an entire saga about a family that led to so many memes that describes everything about the royal family. If you're thinking about challengers with Zendaya coming out, like Bollywood loves the love triangle, so there's Kuchu Chodhahe over there as well. It's just there for the taking. And wherever I've traveled in the world, whether it's China or Peru or Uzbekistan, or even here in Las Vegas, I landed here and my Uber driver is from Cuba, and he goes, "Oh, I love Bollywood. Are you from India?" And he just ate my ear off about Bollywood movies that he loved. And I think that that's kind of interesting that these are all stories that we kind of share. Everybody who's watching these movies, we all kind of understand what we're learning. This is a little bit about, I ended up also writing these stories too. So I ended up writing my high school paper and writing for the Yale Daily News. So that's chapter 1, which is a little bit about me. So all we've learned is like, I believe ridiculous things are possible. I had a really strange childhood growing up mostly in India, but then moving to New York City. I somehow had dinner with Shah Rukh Khan. Okay, so how does this relate to the Juggernaut? There's that really famous saying by Steve Jobs that, life doesn't really connect unless you look backwards. And then when you look backwards, all of the dots seem to connect and there's like a perfect history. So this is a pitch I kind of tell people about the Juggernaut. The Juggernaut is South Asian culture. It exists because South Asian culture has gone mainstream. You see these people everywhere, right? We've always seen these people, but they're now in more prominent positions, from the vice president to the CEO of Microsoft to, pop culture, from Miss Marvel to Never Have I Ever to Mindy Kaling to maybe people, in politics on the other side of the pond, like Rishi Sunak. And this is what we tell people, right? The Juggernaut tells powerful South Asian stories to inform, entertain, and connect a global community. We have a lot of reach, so if you haven't followed us, find us on Instagram. It's the easiest way to find us. We have a free newsletter as well. It has over 100,000 readers. But our job is to tell South Asian stories in a fun, informative, and connected way. We also host events, kind of like the Asian Hustle Network. So these are some of the events we've also pulled off, from our summit, co-hosting a Q&A with Inder Nui, to co-hosting a party before the Oscars for South Asian excellence. This is what our customers say. They love us. They think it's really cool. They're like, "Hey, I love your commentary. This is 100% overdue." I think this is what a lot of people feel when it comes to a lot of Asian American initiatives. It felt like, hey, this has always been here. Why aren't we, spending more time here? So I told you 2 stories already, right? I told you the story of me and I told you the story of the Juggernaut. And you've kind of seen us both fully formed, right? You're seeing me in front of you speaking. I somehow must have earned my spot here. And you see the Juggernaut already exists. It already has hundreds of thousands of followers, has millions in reach, has all these really cool events. But I think before any of these things happen, what we usually see is a lot of no's, right? It's like everything I ever pitched was initially a no. When I started the Juggernaut, most of the investors I pitched to said that this is nuts. I was actually talking to Maggie behind stage, and she was like, "Yeah, people say that you can't make a business out of community. People say that, I got laughed out of the room when I said that I wanted to start a company like this." I think I've met with over 40 people in New York City, and they said that it would never exist and it would never be big and it would always be so tiny that I had to go to the West Coast to Y Combinator and apply there, where I submitted my application 7 days late, 5 to 7 days late. I didn't think I would get in to such an extent that the day that the interviews came out, where you found out, hey, you got an interview or not, I didn't even check my dashboard. I was the last person to check my dashboard, and I know this because there was only one interview slot left, and that was mine. And when I interviewed, the first thing that they told me after my 10-minute interview was maybe. They said, "Hey, you're great, but maybe." They made me re-interview, and I re-interviewed again for a second time. And after that, I got a yes. And I think my lesson here, for hopefully a lot of folks, maybe it resonates, is that so much of the success we see is the success we see, because we don't really see all the no's right before those successes. But no's are a gift, because each no I get is one less no until my final yes. And so that's a little bit about, how the Juggernaut came to be, and I guess how I came to be, but it was definitely a path of no's first. So I want to talk a little bit about you. I guess this is hopefully what you all have been coming here for. So we talked about these three things. You can be anything you want to be, always be hustling, and build something people want. So I kind of use each mantra to kind of inform me on what I want to do in terms of these other questions. So I think a lot of times we ask ourselves, what should I be doing? And sometimes we limit ourselves because we're not thinking about what's possible. We're thinking about what's possible, or, hey, what qualifications do I have for my next job? Or do I have all the skills I need to start this next company? So it feels as if we're already limiting ourselves when we ask, what should I be doing? And I will really encourage you all, you don't have to use this mantra, but try one of your own. I would really encourage you all to try to change that question and remind yourself that you can do anything, that anything is possible. And if there's anything that taught me that, it was Bollywood. It was showing up in the New York City Spelling Bee. It was having dinner with Shah Rukh Khan. But anything is possible. And so when you ask yourself, what should I be doing? Don't limit yourself in that first go. So the next question is, what should I not be doing? And this is where, we often don't ask ourselves this either, because I think I come from a culture where we're expected to take everything on. No matter how hard something is, no matter how easy something is, we're expected in some groups where, hey, you want to try your hardest, you never quit. But sometimes it's okay to give up certain paths. I used to be a consultant at McKinsey. I used to be, on that corporate ladder, but I kind of left it all to pay myself for several years to build something else. And so when it says, what should I not be doing? I kind of think about always be hustling, which is, I know it sounds like that means you should be working your darndest, but always be hustling to me is always kind of going for it. So what should I not be doing for me ended up being a question of, just because I've done something in the past doesn't mean I have to continue doing it. And that to get to that next step might be harder or diagonal or a twisted path. It might involve applying to Y Combinator late, but just do it. Just because you're doing something doesn't mean you have to keep doing it. And the last question I ask often is, how do I know I'm on the right track? And at the end of the day, whatever you're going to be doing is going to be helping somebody else, whether you realize it or not. Whether you're launching a new skincare line or whether you're creating content on TikTok, you are touching somebody else's life. So if the way you're on the right track is going back to, this Y Combinator saying, which is build something people want. And that means going and speaking to the people whose lives you're affecting. So even if there's one person whose life you're changing, you might be on the right path. And I think that one person builds to more people and builds to more people. And before you know it, you might have a company on your hands, or you might be reaching 10 million people a week. But I can assure you, when we were first starting the Juggernaut, it was crickets. I think we had 2 followers on Instagram. Nobody knew about us. Nobody knew what we were doing. It was really hard to recruit writers. It sucked. But try with that one person, because even that one person you're changing their life for, that leads you to believe that, you are building something they want. So these are things I've tried to figure out what I want to do. I don't know if this is helpful. The random walk, which is just trying lots of different things and then actually asking yourself if you like it. I've done everything from intern at a Bollywood production company to summer intern at a media company investing in Hollywood celebrities. I have also, what else have I done? I've also consulted with BuzzFeed when they were launching it internationally. I did so many different aspects of media because I thought I wanted to be in this industry, but I just tried completely different weird things just to figure out what I liked. Local maximum, global maximum, which is sometimes you think you're on the right track because of all these things I've said, but you still might not be happy. And I think that's when I kind of think to myself that do I need to go back to the drawing board and restart everything? And I think there are moments like that at the Juggernaut too, where I'm like, hey, writing a really good story every day is really difficult. Keeping up with the Instagram algorithm and producing content for people is really hard. I have had thoughts do we just scrap the entire thing and rebuild it as a different business? As long as we're still impacting people by telling powerful South Asian stories. Do we become a movie studio? Do we become a membership club? So I think that that's the second thing that's kind of scary to do, but that hopefully can help. And the next thing is peak experiences. This is an exercise where you kind of want to think about 3 moments in your life when you've been really, really happy. Don't think about work, don't think about personal, just think about 3 moments in your life you've been really, really happy. And write it down. Write it down as long as you can, 500 words, 3 experiences you've been really happy. This is kind of the oracle part. Then ask 3 to 4 of your friends and mentors to read your 3 different graphs on the moments you were really happy and ask them to form conclusions. And it's kind of like tea reading. You'll find some really weird patterns. I think when I did this, my friend said, well, it seems like you really like working with people. That was something that was common in all 3. It seems that you like weirdly hard stuff. You just want something that's really challenging and learning. So this is one way to find out about yourself. And the last thing is a life vision mission statement. I know this sounds really weird, but that can flow from things that you find yourself constantly gravitating towards. You're constantly doing that one thing, even though it doesn't really make sense, but you're constantly doing that. Whether it's, I was watching some of the other talks for AHN Hustle Network. There's one content creator who initially started on YouTube, then scratched the entire thing, and then did TikTok. And obviously, they're still doing storytelling, but it's in completely different formats, which means redoing everything from scratch. But there's still something there in that person's mission statement and life vision that allows them to keep persisting in that. So try to find out what that is for you, because we all have that. This is my mission statement. I think that's how I was introduced. My mission is to diversify storytelling. For me, that means that so much of the news we read, so many of the videos we watch, so much of what we do, so much of that is dominated by certain mainstream narratives. The number of times Shah Rukh Khan comes up in conversations with my Indian friends or South Asian friends or even Bollywood friends versus the number of times Shah Rukh Khan comes up in the New York Times, it's very different. The number of times maybe a K-drama shows up among my friends versus the number of times it shows up in a Wall Street Journal. We know that some things are created to be mainstream, but we don't have to go that way. And so for me, that's my mission statement. So these are some of my lessons. I don't know if this is helpful, but here we go. Things can get lonely, right? Things can get lonely because when we're forging new stories or when we're creating new stories, they're very uncomfortable for people. To tell somebody, especially a venture capitalist who's never seen this before, that, hey, the future is South Asia and the future is South Asian culture, it's very uncomfortable for them because that's not a story they've heard before. That's not the story that they might even believe in. So your job sometimes isn't to convince the non-believers. Your job is to just believe in your story until it becomes definitively true, because it will. Ask for help. Find those people that can understand what you're building. Even if they don't understand you perfectly, they might know that there's something there that they can latch onto. And ask for help again. I know I'm stressing this twice because I did not do this. I often thought, well, nobody understands this. I'm just going to keep working on this alone, and then went from there. Find friends in unlikely places. Sometimes our own community can be the toughest on us. I know, I can repeat that again. Sometimes our own community can be the toughest on us. I know that's a very real phenomenon. They can sometimes say, hey, you're not doing this well enough, or hey, this event isn't the way I wanted it to be, or you should be inviting different people, or you should be doing something different. And that means that sometimes our biggest allies are not from our own community. That's really important. Some of my biggest investors and supporters have been Black women because they saw what was happening in their communities and saw what was going on in their communities and saw such direct parallels to mine. And they were there whenever I needed a helping hand or an ear, just to listen, just to help and support. Lean into your weird. As you saw, I was banging pots and pans and writing and scribbling all over and doing strange things. But everything that is your weird is also your strength, and again, does connect into a story by the end of it. Ooh, I think I'm missing a few pages, but we're gonna skip that. But 2 more things that I wanted to tell you was that content never really changes. A good story never dies. So the reason I started with why are stories your best friend is that a good story will be eternal. So no matter the context, no matter how difficult things are, Find that story that resonates with you and keep telling it. And the last thing is human nature doesn't really change. So even as we're amid a potential TikTok ban, there might always be a future TikTok, there might be a future Medium, but that good hook, a good story, that tension, that drama, that's never gonna change. I told you a few stories today. You probably heard a bunch of stories today already from other people. Think a little bit about what parts of them resonated and what are the weird parts of it that you remember still by the end of it? Because you have aspects of that in your own life already, and you haven't really harnessed it yet. So the last thing I'll leave you all with is I'm here to help. If you ever have a story, if you ever have an idea, if you're ever like, hey, I'm not sure, I'm very much available on DMs on Instagram and Twitter, so just reach out, ask me a question, ask for help. And these are other ways you can help us if you're ever interested in the Juggernaut, what we do. But thank you.